everyone.
We're Kayla.
And I'm Silas. And this is the adventures of Kayla and Silas, a podcast about everything travel. Each week we cover travel topics we find interesting and that we hope you will too. We are back home.
We are home.
We're sitting in our kitchen living room space. It's kind of open concept.
Yeah, I was going to say we're sitting in the dining area.
We're sitting
of a big room.
We're sitting in our house. And
yes,
we were just talking about our trip, so we said let's turn on the mics and record this because it's gonna be awesome.
Zappity, as Silas would say.
It's as Michael Scott would say. But before we jump into the whole trip, the whole second half of our trip, the part that took place in Amsterdam, we have a few housekeeping things. First of all, if you missed it, the first half of our trip was split into two podcasts. So if you didn't get a chance to listen to those yet, go ahead and check them out at adventuresofkaylaandsilas.com or on soundcloud.com/Kayla and Silas.
Yeah. That part was we were in the United Kingdom. We were in Wales and southern England for a bit.
Yep.
So
Southwest England, and we had a lot of cool adventures there, lots of stories, and that podcast got split into two. We want to make sure we got podcast out in time the week that we were still traveling, and so as we were trying to record it and get it out in time, we ran out of time to do the whole thing, so we just split it into a little bit easier, a little more manageable that way.
That's Silas's way of saying that he wanted to go hang out in Amsterdam instead of sitting in the hotel room editing, so
we ran out of time.
Yeah.
That's
why there's two podcasts about the UK.
The next bit of housekeeping is we are on iTunes.
Yay!
We mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but in case you hadn't heard yet, we are on iTunes. And if you'd like to keep up to date with our podcast, feel free to head over there and subscribe to our podcast channel on iTunes. I'm still new to the lingo. Is it called a channel? It's not a channel.
That's a YouTube thing.
You can subscribe to our podcast. I think that's how you say it. You can subscribe to our podcast, and please leave us a comment because we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
But now on to the juicy stuff. Amsterdam.
Yes, indeed.
Where we left off in the last podcast was we spent the night in Bristol, and we really didn't do a whole lot there. We had some Italian food, and then we went to bed.
Tired.
We were super sleepy.
And we stayed at a hotel by the train station so that it would be, because that's where the bus to the airport is.
Super easy to get to the airport from the hotel because we were literally a 2.5 minute walk from our hotel to the bus, and the bus dropped us off at the very front door of the Bristol airport. So
yeah, the airport in Bristol is fairly small, I think, or at least from what I could tell, and
very manageable.
Yeah, but the area around the train station wasn't necessarily.
It's not the center of town.
So it wasn't like there was a lot around. So there was an Italian place we ate there, and then got some R&R so we could get to Amsterdam the next day.
Yep. So we got to the airport. There were no problems. We flew over to Amsterdam, took a taxi from the airport to our hotel. We had looked at a couple of different options, but where our hotel was in relationship to the airport, it was actually faster for us to take a taxi straight there, because if we had taken a bus to Central Station and then tried to get tram tickets from Central Station to our hotel, the hotel was directly between the airport and Central Station. So we said
it was closer to the airport than Central Station. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah, and I think we paid €30, give or take, for the taxi, but it would have cost us, it was like $5 for the train to Central Station, and then another €3. There
you go.
So €8 per person to take the train to Central Station and then a tram back out to our hotel.
So it was about twice as expensive to take the taxy, but it was also
about
twice,
5 times as fast.
5 times as fast.
Yeah.
So we at the end of the day, it seemed worth it.
We Ubered back though, which was nice because that was a little less expensive.
To Uber. So Yes, very, very convenient, very easy, very quick to get to our hotel.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the day ended up being a work day. Kayla joked about me not wanting to see Amsterdam, but really we got to the hotel, we recorded the podcast, then we went out and we went shopping, got a few things, some snacks and things for our time in Amsterdam, and
breakfast
foods and things. And then I went back and I edited as much as I could before I was exhausted and said, we need dinner. And then we went and got some dinner, and that was the rest of our day. It was very, very low key. We went back, maybe watched some episodes of Full House, and then went to bed.
Yeah, we didn't really do much that first day, but we didn't probably get to our hotel until 1 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So it's not like it was a full day anyway, but you got to try, though, your favorite.
But yes, this is where the story starts to get interesting. Dinner, the first night, we sat down at dinner, and Kayla said, we have to try Bitterballen, which, in case you didn't know, it is a deep fat fried roux that is amazing.
I think Silas liked it more than I did, but
it was delicious. I'd have Bitterballen every week if I could. I wouldn't do it every day just because I don't need my love handles to get any larger than they already are, but they were delicious. So we had Bitterballen, and then the next day we woke up and we said we're going to try and get a jump on the day. And so we woke up at, the early time of about 11:30, I think, 11:45. Did we get up before noon?
I think we got up before noon, but we didn't leave the hotel until afternoon.
It was a rough start to day 2 in Amsterdam. But we got out and we walked through Vondel Park. That was really it was a big park, and it was really, really cool.
Yeah, I think it's essentially Amsterdam's version of Central Park in New York. It's right in the middle of town. It's got lots of different things going on.
There's a stream that runs through it. There are little ponds that are there. People are walking their dogs, riding bikes.
There's like
jogging.
A water like for kids to play in, like a watery area.
A little kids' water park,
kiddie pool and playground and sports.
There was a restaurant there.
And restaurants, and
people were taking naps, reading books, hanging out with friends.
There were a lot of people just essentially what I would call picnicking.
Yeah.
But
this was a Thursday midday too. It wasn't as busy as the busiest day of the week. I'm sure weekends are much busier there, but it was very busy for a early Thursday afternoon. So that was really. We walked through that park several other days on our trip.
Yeah, our hotel was right there, which was nice because I don't know that we would have spent as much time in the park if we hadn't been staying where we were.
Oh, right. Yep. No, getting out there would have been...
We probably would have walked into it a little bit and then been like, oh, that was a nice park, and then walked away. But we got to see the whole thing.
But that first day we walked clear. We
walked the whole length.
Yeah, we walked down to the far end of it, and then walked through so we kind of backtracked a little bit before we headed to the Canal District. The first touristy stop that we did that morning, though, was to the Heineken Museum.
That afternoon,
yes. We weren't going to the Heineken Museum in the morning. We were very close.
Asleep in the morning.
We were on the cusp, though. So we got in, and it was a well put together museum. We had done the Guinness factory in Dublin just about a year ago, and so it was fun to compare and contrast the two museums and the way that they were set up. We both agreed that the Guinness factory was more in depth.
Yeah, from the museum side of things,
right.
I would say Guinness wins. From the beer taste side of things, I would say that Heineken wins, just because I don't like Guinness at all.
But I would say they both are delicious beers, and it was fun to get to sample them right there. Mm-hmm. But no, the Heineken Museum had a lot of interesting things that I didn't know about Heineken. The fact that it was entered into the World Fair as Netherlands' entry into the World Fair. They said, we're going to enter this beer the same year that France, it was in France, and France had entered the Eiffel Tower. Kayla's going to look up what year that was, but Amsterdam Heineken beer took first place and got the gold star over the Eiffel Tower. So that was the first thing that they said as soon as we walked in, that, oh, here's some information about Heineken. It's better than the Eiffel Tower. And then they went in and told the story about it. But I felt like they were a little too excited about that. But,
I can't find it. I'm sure that with more time,
If we come up with the answer, we'll put it in the show notes, and you can check out a Wikipedia link or something to learn all about it.
Because I thought it was year 1900, but this says the Eiffel Tower was 1889.
That could be the right year.
That could have been it, I suppose. We'll have to check the fact books.
We'll go back to the fact books.
It was the guy at Heineken who told us if we're wrong.
Yeah. So we ended the tour with their rooftop bar, which was a lot of fun. We say we ended the tour. There was more after that, but it was very silly. I think they'd put together a few games and a few places where you can take funny pictures and things for people after they had a couple of the included beverages that you got at the rooftop bar. Mm-hmm. So you could go through and take silly pictures and things. But
yeah,
it was the end of the tour for us. We were ready to move on to the next thing. And as we went through the silly parts, we were like, we're not feeling that silly. So
I'm never feeling silly.
Kayla never feels silly, just for the record. But so we kind of hurried through that section, and then we moved on to walk across town to try and get to a boat tour. We stopped for food, and we just got a meat and cheese platter at that restaurant near where the boat tour was.
Yeah. So the way Amsterdam's set up, it's like there's basically three major rings of canals.
Set up in a horseshoe pattern.
Yeah, it's kind of set up in a horseshoe. So we were outside of the horseshoe where we stayed for our hotel. Then we walked through the park, which kind of ends at the beginning of the first horseshoe. And Heineken's along that outer ring. And so then we were walking all the way up to the center of the horseshoe, basically, is where we had a ticket already, basically, for this canal tour boat. And so despite there being a canal tour boat literally across the street from Heineken, we walked all the way downtown instead.
For the thing we had already paid for. And
yeah.
I think we should, before we get too far, we should
talk about that.
Yeah, go ahead and tell them about the pass book that we got.
Yeah, so in Amsterdam, and this is true in other cities too, so you should always kind of look into this. We knew we wanted to go to a lot of museums because, kind of in preparation for Amsterdam, we said, we want to go to Jan Frank House, we want to go to Heineken, we want to go to Rijksmuseum, we want to go to Van Gogh. So we had all these things in our head, like we want to 100% do these things without a doubt. Well,
those things tend to be expensive when you start doing all of them.
Yeah, so most of those things cost at least 10, if not 20 euro per person to get in, and it's like, how do you not spend that extra money when you're already there?
Right.
So there's basically two major groups in Amsterdam that provide discounts for tourist attractions. And the first is called Holland Pass. And so as the name suggests, it's not just Amsterdam specific. It's for the whole country. Basically, you buy a pass and you get so many tickets. So there's gold tickets and silver tickets. And so the more expensive attractions like Heineken and Van Gogh cost a gold ticket, and then less expensive attractions like the canal tour cost a silver ticket. And so we bought a pack of tickets each. So I think we got 6 tickets, 3 gold, 3 silver for, I want to say 60 euro, but I could be off a little bit.
Yeah, I thought it was 60 or 70 euro.
So essentially what it meant was if we paid for the first 3 big museums that we're already going to go to, that then we'd get 3 more tickets for kind of the lesser museums, I guess, for free. Again, I'm rounding numbers wise, but it benefited us in the end, money wise.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the boat tour was something that we would not have to do on our own.
I don't think we would have done that.
But I think that it was a lot of fun. So after lunch, we went and we did this boat tour with one of the silver tickets. And the tour guide was this goofy guy. I think luckily he wasn't the only source of information, because they also had headsets that played audio clips as we passed things. And so I actually learned a lot from those little audio clips. Mm-hmm. And Kayla did a great job taking a nap on the boat.
Well, I just napped in between the parts where the audio guide had information.
That's what she said, but I don't know that she caught everything.
But the audio guide was more, I guess, formal information, dates and facts and things. And the tour guide, or the the guy who was driving the
driver,
boat.
the captain.
The captain, he was just kind of chiming in with random other stuff. Like, there's the Waldorf Astoria. It costs 600 euro a night to stay there.
Look, this is the skinniest door in the city.
Yeah.
He pointed that sort of stuff out. And we looked at it and I went, I'm never going to find that ever again. But
yeah, exactly.
It was definitely a worthwhile little trip. A couple of the things that I did take away, though, was that you could see that the buildings were very crooked. Mm-hmm. Well, not all of the buildings, but some of the buildings had settled weird. The foundation below them had started to settle in weird ways. And so the buildings, from the front view, kind of zigzagged their way up to the top.
So a lot of Amsterdam, much like Venice, there's supports underground because they took what was water at the time to make more clearly defined land spaces or whatever. And so some of that wood is rotting now, it sounds like, from the tour.
Well, it's been rotting. And so this wasn't a new development.
Over many, many, many years, because the canal district is very old, so those buildings aren't new by any means, and so. Yeah.
And not only are they zigzagging, but they were intentionally built to slant towards the canals themselves. So they slant outward. And it's not super noticeable, but as they pointed out, then I looked around the city and I was like, yes, it's very obvious as I'm walking down the street that the building seems to be slanting out over top of me. Mm-hmm. And at the very top of each building, there were hooks out of the main beam that ran across the top of the roof. So those hooks are designed and built into the roof so that you can hoist things up. You can run a cord through it and use it as a pulley system to pull up furniture and other large things that you can't get through the door because the doors are
building materials
narrow and you want to be able to get big things up there. So they have fairly large windows that can help support moving things in that way. So
yeah. It was interesting. I never would have thought of it.
Yeah.
So before we go on, I wanted to mention the other pass for Amsterdam. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
So we didn't use this pass, so I can't necessarily endorse it. But we spent a lot of time comparing the Holland Pass to the Amsterdam card.
Oh, yeah.
Which you pay for, and I can't remember the cost now. I think it was around the same 60 euro or so. You pay for the card, and then there's a whole list of things you can do for free, including all of the trams and buses and metro are free then. And I think that one you pay for a certain number of days. So you get like a 5-day Amsterdam card, and then you can ride all the trams. You can go to all these museums. But the problem for us was that some of the main museums, like Heineken and Rijksmuseum, weren't included. And we knew we wanted to do those things, so it kind of felt like, it was a balancing act. Are we just going to pay for those plus the Amsterdam card, or should we just get the Holland Pass where we know all of those tickets are going to go to use?
Yeah.
So if you're going to be in Amsterdam and wanting to do like 5 tourist attractions per day, I feel like that would be a really good value.
Yeah.
But we mostly just did, I guess, the bigger attractions.
Yep.
And Ian Frankhouse is like in its own world because they're not on either of those cards. But it wasn't too expensive, like €9 to go there. But
yeah. So after the boat tour, we ended up going to the red light district for an early evening trip to the Prostitution Museum.
Yep.
Which was something that had not been on either of our radars, but because of the Holland Pass that we purchased,
we used one of our silver tickets.
We used one of our silver tickets. We looked through the list of things, and we kept reading through the list, and this one popped out as the most fascinating of the options that we could get to that day. And so we said, I'm not sure exactly what to expect here, but why not? Let's go check it out. And it was a in-depth view or look into the life of what the prostitutes who work in the red light district go through on a daily basis. It wasn't incredibly graphic, but I think the interesting thing was that you walked in, and as you were going through the museum, they showed the kind of back where the
it was an actual brothel, so you got to actually walk in the
retired brothel space.
Yeah, so you got to walk in the area where the girls would sit or stand in front of the windows.
But before that, there was the room where they had the cameras set up and they could see people walking in and out. And so there was, I don't know if it was where their pimp worked or.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So they showed that office space, which was behind the scenes, and then they showed the window where the girls sat. The interesting thing was that it was actually the windows that
Looks
out onto the main red light district canal. And so people were still walking by these windows, and there were chairs there for you to be able to sit down and see what it was like to have people walk by and look at you. And I didn't take advantage of that. I didn't want to hold up the line. There were several other people walking in and out. I knew I would draw a lot of attention, so you didn't want to make it uncomfortable for anyone else on the tour. But from there, then you got to walk into a space that was set up for as the actual room where the dirty deed happens. That was a very unique tour. And one of the most interesting facts that I think I took away from it was that 15,000 people a day will walk in front of a prostitute's window in the red light district, which to me just says there are a lot of people randomly walking around in that area of town, or in Amsterdam in general. And as we walked outside, I definitely believed it, because there were that whole district was super packed. There were tons and tons of people there.
Yeah, it was.
But I think just in general, though, as we walked around Amsterdam, we felt like there were more people walking around or biking than basically anywhere else that we've been in the United States or anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we lived like Manhattan, New York,
sure,
it wouldn't have felt so weird, but because of where we live, but I mean, also compared to other places we've traveled, which aren't necessarily small cities, it felt very busy.
Well, think about when we went. I'm thinking about London. I mean, comparing Amsterdam to London or to New York City doesn't seem like the amount of foot traffic would be comparable, but I feel like it really was. And maybe we were just in highly populated parts of the city, but it seemed like every street we turned down, there were tons of people walking or biking at all times of the day. So
yeah, and Amsterdam's a big biking city, but I was more surprised by that. I wasn't as surprised by it because I knew that, but I think the foot traffic really surprised me, and I think a lot of the foot traffic was probably tourists, but it wasn't always in like the touristy part of town, I guess.
Right. Yep.
So, but yeah, it was crazy busy.
Super crazy busy.
Also, on a side note, I was terrified of riding a bike in Amsterdam because there's like special lanes and special rules for riding a bike in Amsterdam.
There were a lot of rules
and then there's like the cars, and then there's trams, and then there's the bike lanes, and then you can have motorbike or like scooters in the bike lanes. And then
one restaurant, the first restaurant we sat down at, we looked out the window and there was literally people walking by, biking by, driving by, riding a tram by, and riding a boat by.
Down the canal, yeah.
You could look
then
out
you have
and
the
see
boat traffic.
all of this just out the window. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was awesome. It's an engineering feat, I'm sure, to keep all that running smoothly. Because
those city planners.
There are bridges in Amsterdam where you have to, like bridges that have to be raised for certain boats to go through.
Yep.
And so then you're stopping all of the other modes of transportation for the boat.
Right.
Which is insane when you think about all the different
canals that are there and the number of places that can stop
that happens at.
Traffic, yeah. Mm-hmm. So that was the end of day 2. And then day 3 happened, which was by far the fullest,
craziest
day of our not crazy, but just full. Mm-hmm. Just packed full of activities. There was no more room for activities on day 3. We started very early for us, clear at the crack of dawn. 8:30, I think, is when dawn happens.
Well, we had to be there at 8:30 though. So,
that's right. We did have to get up and start walking real early. We
left at like 7:30.
7:30 we left, and we headed to the Anne Frank house.
Yep.
Which I had been to several years ago on a study abroad trip. This time when we went back, they had redone a few things in regards to how they conveyed information. And I think they had gotten rid of a lot of plaques that had stuff written on them. They had really streamlined it so that there was more space for people to walk. And they had a really well done audio guide tour set up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the audio tour was great.
and a lot of fascinating things that we learned about her life and her family's life, and just a really well done tour. But as an FYI, if you're looking to go there, they hate backpacks. So just try to avoid bringing it.
Yeah, big backpacks.
If possible.
I had mine, but they made me wear it on the front of my body. The other thing I was going to say that if you want to go there is you should book tickets like super in advance, because we looked to get tickets like, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks before we left. And
the only
time available was on this specific day at 8:30. And every other day that we were in town, it was completely full. And you can go, like, you can show up at like 3 o'clock or something in the afternoon.
For a walk-in.
And do like essentially a walk-in tour. But I think you still have to show up and get another time and then come back later in the day. But like I said, that's kind of separate from a lot of the other touristy things because it's run by its own foundation. And I mean, we were the first group in, and I still felt like it was kind of busy in there. You say the foot traffic's improved, but it's the original building where the family actually hid. And so
and the space that they were hiding in,
tiny stairwells. And the space they were hidden in was a hiding place. Like, it wasn't this.
It wasn't a mansion. Yeah.
This awesome, huge space.
We did, however, comment that it did feel a lot larger than you would imagine a hiding space being. All things considered, for that time period, number one, and number two, for it being a hiding place, for their circumstances. Yeah, it definitely was a lot bigger than I would have imagined it being.
Yeah. That said, as long as they spent there and as many people as were in there, I'm sure
it felt cramped.
Yeah, I'm sure that it felt cramped. It's been a couple of decades since I read Anne Frank's diary, but
it makes me want to go back and read it.
Yeah, it does make you want to go back and reread it, especially, I think I read it when I was 10 or 11. And my 10 or 11-year-old self was kind of annoyed with Anne's
first
teenage ramblings. I didn't have the capacity, to understand the larger situation, I don't think. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a must-see. It's just if you're going to Amsterdam, if you have any interest at all in World War II or anything like that, then it's just a little piece of history.
Yep. But after that, we left and we were hungry, and Kayla spotted a pancake shop. What was the name of that place? Amsterdam Pancakes or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a chain or what. It was just we were hungry, and it was the first thing I saw.
First thing that we saw, and it was lovely. We had apple and bacon pancake and a lemon and sugar pancake. These were Dutch style, and they were delicious.
Yeah, so Dutch pancakes are the size of a pizza and a little bit thinner than American pancakes, I would say.
Or a little bit thicker than a crepe.
Yeah.
So if you're familiar with those, now you have your scale by which to determine whether or not you have a Dutch pancake in front of you next time you sit down to eat one.
There's a lot of savory options as well as a lot of sweet options. So we decided to try one of each.
Yep. Very, very good stop. And from there, we had enough energy then to head on to Rijksmuseum, which had a lot of old art, paintings, and sculptures. And there was also some metal work, some jewelry, but then there were also plates and vases, and
dishes
and you name it.
Yeah, there were a lot of different components, but I think the big hitters there, they've got a couple of Van Gogh pieces, which is so funny to me because the Van Gogh Museum's
literally right next door.
Stone's throw away. The biggest thing there is Rembrandt, or at least that's what I thought the most impressive.
It was. There were some really impressive pieces that he did. It was really cool to see the different pieces and to see the history, especially the parts that they had related to some of the wars that were fought in the area. They not only did they have the paintings there, but they had what looked like original weapons from the time period and some portraits of Napoleon with weapons next to him as well. So it was a very complete, very full museum, and it was a lot of fun to go explore.
We did not do the audio tour, which you could do. Probably every third painting or so had an audio guide. You'd just type in the number and then you could listen along to information about the piece of art. But instead, at all of the major art pieces, they had what kind of looked like a placemat, like placemat size kind of laminated cards that described the painting in greater detail. And then it would have like highlighted parts to like point out different aspects. So like, oh, look at the dress of this woman. Like, this is why it's significant. And so pretty much everywhere I saw one of those, I picked it up and I read through those. And so that really helped me focus in on, okay, this is a more significant piece here at the art museum, because when I'm looking at two paintings, I don't necessarily know which one's more important. But Rembrandt is there, Vermeer. Possibly the coolest part of Rijksmuseum, though, is this really cool tunnel that goes underneath the museum.
Oh, yeah.
So
we walked through that almost every day, getting to and from places.
It's a road, but cars weren't allowed in there, but bikes could, and there were sidewalks as well. And the acoustics are really cool. And so every time we walked through, there's an orchestra playing, and I was just looking up online to see if I was forgetting any, big artists that were in there. And they said that, there's always someone playing street music.
What was amazing about the acoustics was that it took this 6-person group. There were some accordions in there and things, but it felt like it was
like a full orchestra. The sound was just amazing. And it's beautiful. It's just this really, you have to walk through it.
So we are still on day 3. Yes. There's more that happened. After Rijksmuseum, we went and Kayla took a nap, and I went and
we were going to do the Van Gogh Museum, but we kind of petered out in the art
we knew
arena.
We had more to do, so we didn't want to just run through Van Gogh and feel like we didn't get to fully experience it. So we went back to the hotel. Kayla took a nap. I did some work, and then we got up. Kayla got up from her nap, and we went to dinner at a place called The Pantry, where, drum roll, more Bitterballen. It was delicious.
Yeah, so I ate more Bitterballen. And we also had these, like, goat cheese deep fat fried.
Oh, yes.
Ball stick things. I don't know exactly. But they were essentially Bitterballen, but they had goat cheese inside instead of...
was that the one that I said? No, that's not the one that I said tasted like a mini bite-sized grilled cheese sandwich.
No. This tasted just like the most delicious cheese I've ever had. And so we were like fighting over the last one. I think we ended up splitting it in half.
We did. Kayla was very generous and allowed me to eat.
But the Pantry, I mean, it's one of the most highly rated restaurants in Amsterdam, specifically for Dutch food. And so we were very lucky we got in because we didn't make any dinner reservations on this trip.
Once again, we did not make dinner reservations, and we were able to go eat there. So,
yeah.
Very good dinner.
Highly recommend. Although I ordered the ham, and what I got was like...
half a pig.
It was like bone in this like giant hunk of meat that was like propped up so that like the bone was sticking out.
It was
insane.
A massive amount of meat.
Yeah. I did not eat it all.
Kayla didn't eat it all. And I was full from Bitterballen, so I didn't get to help her with that.
What did you have there?
I had a lot of potatoes.
And sausage.
And the sausage. And the potatoes all had, I got the sampler potato plate. So mashed potatoes with
different things inside.
One had carrots, one had kale, and one had something else. It was all delicious.
I don't remember. Yeah.
It was all very good. But from there, we ate until we had enough energy to go do an escape room.
We did.
We had done an escape room before in
Budapest.
And we thoroughly enjoyed it. And so we said Kayla suggested possibly doing an escape room. And so I found one online, and it was called
The Jungle.
The Jungle. Now that we show up to the escape room, the person asks if we know what it is. And we do, because we've done one before. But in case you haven't experienced an escape room before, the premise is you are locked, quote unquote, in a room and must escape.
And then there are clues to help you figure out how to get out of the room, because usually it involves either unlocking a door or finding a combination or any number of tasks that are can be related to math or puzzles or
trivia, kind of.
Yeah, it can be all sorts of strangeness. But the one we went to was a little different. You weren't actually trying to get out of the room. You were trying to
Correct.
disarm a bomb.
Because you were in the jungle, and there was a bomb that was going to go off because you were in the jungle.
I guess that makes more sense than trying to escape out a door inside the jungle.
Yes, sure.
I mean, it didn't
It
really matter because either way you were just...
I felt like maybe they were trying to set it up as if we were in a Terminator movie, but because of copyright issues, they couldn't say Terminator. And so they just put a bomb in the jungle and said, people will get it or they won't, and it'll be fine.
I don't understand what that has to do with Terminator, but...
Exactly.
It's okay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Not Terminator. Predator. Excuse me.
Oh, Predator. That clarifies things for me.
Kayla's shaking her head. She does not understand pop culture. We get in there, and the clues start unfolding. We knew exactly what we had to do. We went straight to work and pulled clues from everywhere and got stuck a couple of times, but...
Yeah, we did a little bit of a slow start, and then we figured it. Then we thought we had it figured out.
And we got right down to the end, and there were 5 minutes left. And we said, okay, great, we have to open this last thing. We opened it up, and then there was a final puzzle, and
we could not figure out this last thing. We couldn't
figure it out. It was just, I think we would have figured it out, but we had 5 minutes left, and so we got very, very stressed at the very last minute. At the last 5 minutes, and kind of rushed a little bit.
Well, and the other thing was we had missed one clue that we needed at the very end to solve that puzzle that we should have found like 20 minutes or 30 minutes beforehand. And up until that point, we knew we had other clues that we needed help with future things, and we'd used all of them up. So we're sitting here looking at this last box like, we have no idea what we're supposed to do with this.
So in this particular space, there are cameras watching the room. The guy who is the game master is watching the room to be able to chime in and say, oh, maybe you should try closer to that tree with the monkey in it, or whatever the scenario is.
Right.
To help keep you on track so that you don't get frustrated and say, this is awful, I want out of here.
Yeah.
And to make you feel more comfortable that you aren't just, especially for rooms that you're quote unquote locked into, there's somebody there to reassure you, it's okay, we'll let you out if you can't figure it out. There's time. So it was in the last 5 minutes that he chimed in and said, oh, here's a little hint.
You might want to go back to something you already looked at. Go back over
here and check this out. And so we did, and then we got it with, 20 seconds left on the clock. So we did get out. We needed a little help.
Not as well as, the last one we did, we did two when we were in Budapest. Yeah. The first one we had to get a clue for, but the second one I think we did all by ourselves. But it's super fun. I mean, it's not necessarily related to Amsterdam specifically, but
Correct.
When you're on vacation, especially, where we live, we'd have to drive a little bit to get to an escape room. And so it's not just something that's like in your backyard, or even if it is, you can only solve so many things before you've already done all the ones in your city.
Yeah.
And so it was a fun thing to do, and Silas gets really into it. He's like, "Oh my gosh, so we have this clue, now we have to do this other thing, and now we have to do this." And I'm just kind of like along for the ride, even though I am helping. But Silas gets very into it.
I'm a very competitive person.
Yeah, this one in particular had this like, not really a logic puzzle, but it was like a common sense thing, and we could not figure it out. Like, it was one of those things where it's like, which one of these doesn't belong? And then it showed you a bunch of images, and we still don't know why the correct answer didn't belong.
We just started guessing, and eventually the box opened. So, but from there, we ended up heading out for the evening. It wasn't super late evening, but we did go to the red light district for a few drinks, and we people watched because there were thousands of people walking the street, and it was a spectacle that we knew we needed to witness at least once while we were in Amsterdam. So we ended the night and moved right on to day 4, which was our day trip.
Yeah.
We got out of the city, but before we did that, we walked through Vondel Park again, and we didn't realize that we were signing up to be in Amsterdam during this event, but we were there during the
Amsterdam Pride parade and event. And it was awesome. I mean, Amsterdam is arguably the most, or at least one of the most liberal cities in the world in terms of social policy. And so you can imagine their Pride event is like
really well done.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, at one point, the Amsterdam Gay Choir goes by, and then we're walking, and the Amsterdam Gay Choir goes by. And I was like, oh my gosh, Amsterdam has so many gay choirs. This is awesome.
Yeah, there were a ton of people watching the parade, and then just as many, if not more, people in the parade, which was really, really cool to see.
Yeah.
We as we were watching the parade go by, we went, oh, well, that was, I turned to Kayla like, well, that was a lot shorter than I thought it was going to be. Nope, there was just a gap between people. They had kind of got spread out a little bit, and then we watched twice as many people walk by again, and it just kept doing that. And so I think the whole parade was...
I don't even know if we saw the end of the parade.
I don't know if we did either. We knew we had to make it to our train, and so we got to the train station, and we went to a town called Haarlem, which is about 20 minutes away on the train.
Yeah, it's really close.
Really, really
I
close.
would call this suburb, but we actually left town for a while before we got there. So
Yes. But the reason we ended up going to Haarlem was based off of a recommendation from our friend Gareth, who we went to his wedding. And not only did he recommend it, but his dad recommended it, and his grandpa recommended it.
like all
And-
separately, on separate occasions, told us that we had to go to Haarlem.
Oh, you're going to Amsterdam? Well, then you need to go to Haarlem. And they were all so persistent that we said, fine, we have to go now.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that we did. It was a lovely town, and it was a nice change of pace from Amsterdam, because there were so many people in Amsterdam, and it just wasn't as highly populated in Haarlem, being a much smaller town.
Yeah, but it's a lot the same in that there's still canals in Haarlem, a lot of the same architecture. If we were going to get a bike in the Netherlands, I would have biked Haarlem over
Oh,
Amsterdam, just because there was a lot less biking traffic and it was very walkable. But the coolest thing about Haarlem that we never saw in Amsterdam was that they had windmills.
Yeah.
Which is like this, this like quintessential Dutch
Thing.
piece. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got to do that.
We went into the church there,
Yep.
which was massive, and
Had a lot of history tied up in it.
we didn't, as we said, oh, well, we also scheduled massages. And so we went to lunch, and we were going to go get a massage. And we said, well, before we go there, let's go into the church. Churches usually you don't need to take a lot of time, because they're all mostly set up the same. And as we got in, there were lots of little places to stop and read things that I hadn't seen before in a lot of the churches that I've been in throughout Europe.
They had like
And
set that church up
as
a tourist spot. So you get
Yeah.
a pamphlet with information and like points of interest.
if we went back, I would go in there to spend more time. And
Yeah, we rushed through it a
explore.
little too fast. They also have walking tours at that church, like at,
Oh, yeah.
I think at 2:00 or something. And so that would have been really cool if we would have timed it right
Yep.
to see that. And it was like, I don't know, €2 to get in. It was cheap.
Yep.
Some really cool pieces of history in there. The other thing is the plaza right outside the church has a really great market. And so we got to walk through there. There was a lot of great like street food there. It would be a cheap place to grab lunch or something like that, or
Yep.
breakfast. They had things like waffles and fish sandwiches and normal farmer market
things.
type stuff as well. But that area of town was just very vibrant though. Like even though we were in kind of what I would call not a tourist area, there were people everywhere. All the restaurants had tables outside. Everyone was looking in at the market and checking out and people watching. So it was really
very,
fun.
very cool. Very fun city to be in. And after lunch, where I had more Bitterballen, which was
Silas did have more Bitterballen.
delicious. And it was just as delicious in Haarlem as it was in Amsterdam.
Did you
And
think they were going to be different?
I wasn't sure. I just wanted to see if it changed by city or by restaurant. And for the most part, it stayed very delicious at each place that I had it. So after lunch, And then the church, we went to get our massages. But after that, we ended up walking around a little bit more. We walked out to the windmill, like Kayla had mentioned earlier. And then we decided it was time for dinner. And we walked across town to...
Jogenkirk. I'm not sure that I'm pronouncing it right.
That sounds good to me. Which was a church initially, and then was converted into a brew house.
Yep.
And it was an awesome atmosphere. As we walked in, it had to be the place to be after work on
Friday or Saturday.
I guess Saturday evening.
Yeah.
It was the place to be because it was packed, and we went in and we couldn't see a place to sit, and then we saw that there was an upstairs, so we went up there and they said, "Oh no, this whole area is already reserved.
Only.
Yeah, reservation only. So sorry, you can't sit up here." So we went back down, and I said, "We are eating here tonight." Kayla didn't know this. It was too noisy for her to hear me. And I also thought it in my head. And so we were standing there, and I said, "We're going to eat here tonight." And I watched and waited, and then some people hopped up, and I immediately ran over and sat down and took their spot.
Yeah, I mean, it was so crowded. But it's also like a very European restaurant in that, like, or bar in that it's like long bench seating, basically. So it's like... one table could have like 6 people sitting at it in like separate groups, or one table could have like probably 20 people sitting at it if you all knew each other and were comfortable.
Yeah.
And so, but this table just happened, it was like 3 groups of 2. And so the 2 from the middle left. And so we like snuck in there.
But it was fun because since it was such a long table, we sat down and we got our food ordered. And then another group of guys came and sat down next to us. And then we ended up having a really nice conversation with them about Netherlands and our
Dutch
experience
culture
in Amsterdam and things that we should do and that we should try.
And they were making fun of how in the U.S. you have to wear a helmet on your bicycle.
They said, "We can always tell who the tourists are because they're wearing helmets while they're riding their bicycles." And we said, yeah.
We don't have biking lanes here in some places, so it's kind of necessary.
Yeah, very necessary indeed.
It was just interesting. We got to ask them a bunch of questions, and they asked us questions too. And we always enjoy that kind of conversation where we get to explore each other's culture. And so we really appreciated that.
Yep.
And then they gave us a ton of suggestions for other things to do.
Yeah.
They like wanted us to see all of Holland before we left.
Yeah, they're like, "Well, you can just stay longer. And if you
miss the midnight train, then you can take a taxi back
to Amsterdam. And if you miss your flight, then you can just hang out here longer." So apparently we made a good impression because they weren't asking us to hop on the next flight. They were asking us to miss our next flight. So, but that basically rounded out day 4. We headed back after dinner and got off the train and went back to the wine bar that was just down the block from our hotel. So we went basically back to our hotel, but nothing too crazy, and sat there and had a nice conversation and checked Facebook on the Wi-Fi and
the important things.
Tried a few different wines.
Just had a relaxing
Then we
day.
went back and watched a few episodes of Full House and went to bed. Day 5 was a very quiet day for us. We didn't want to try and do too much because we had to fly the next day. And our last day before flying usually is a little bit quieter and not as action-packed.
And I always try to plan nothing for the last day in a city because there's inevitably something that kind of gets missed.
Yep.
In the busyness of the days you do plan. And so in this case, it was the Van Gogh Museum. We had planned to go on Friday and had missed it. And so we felt like that was the kind of, I guess, the important thing to do that day. And we had one more silver ticket left that we were trying to figure out what to do with as well. Yep. However, I woke up not feeling very well. And so we only did the Van Gogh Museum.
Yep, we did the Van Gogh Museum. He had a very interesting life. He was a very interesting guy who... I knew some things about Van Gogh, but being able to walk through the museum, they had set it up to share his life in a very specific way and to be able to see his artwork as you were learning about his life, which was really cool. I didn't realize that he and his brother had such a close relationship and that his brother basically gave him an allowance. They both started off as art dealers. And then Van Gogh was like, "Well, I want to try my hand at this," and then just became amazing. And his brother was like, I believe in your artwork. And so here's an allowance. You can keep doing art for basically 10 years.
Yeah, I think it was 10 years. And then after Van Gogh died, all the artwork went to his brother, who died like crazily like 6 months later. And then it was his brother's wife who is basically the reason Van Gogh's famous today. And she was the one who like created the foundation that started the museum in Amsterdam. Like, it's just this really interesting story because, I mean, you always hear like, oh, artists don't get recognized until after they're dead, that kind of a thing. And in this case, it's like this very clear set of events that led to him rising in fame. And
in the last year or so of his life, there was a point where he went off to a place and did 75 paintings in 75 days or some ridiculous thing. But he was also having a mental breakdown at that point as well.
I mean, it's clear from the accounts that he was very sick.
Yes.
However, the one thing I learned at the museum, I think most people know that he cut off his ear.
Yes.
At some point in his life, I didn't catch.
Well, maybe most people know. Sorry.
Maybe most people know. I don't know. That's like, I feel
Spoiler
like
alert. The one Van Gogh cuts off his ear.
The most interesting, I guess, factoid about his life is that he personally cut off his own ear. But knowing that makes you think that he was this like super impulsive and kind of irrational, emotional person. However, there's a lot of evidence that he was very strategic and careful in planning out a lot of his work. And I think he probably got sicker over time, and things that led to towards the end of his life that led to kind of the more emotional actions got worse. Yeah, so I think if you only know that he cut his own ear off, you just think he's this kind of emotional and irrational person.
Yep.
Well, there kind of is another side to him, and they've saved all the letters between him and his brother, and they have correspondence with some of his other friends as well. But the letters between him and his brother show kind of a different side of him. They were really good friends, and he was not very close with the rest of his family, who kind of looked down on him, I think, for being so artistic.
Yep. He was a fascinating guy who had a fascinating life, and I
feel like that's another must-see in Amsterdam.
Oh, absolutely.
Anne Frank, Van Gogh, must-sees.
Must-sees.
I liked everything that we did in Amsterdam, actually.
Yeah, it was a very fun trip. After Van Gogh, we ended up going to get more pancakes because I said I must have pancakes. That was another must-see for me, was eating pancakes.
Well, but I didn't get pancakes. Remember, I didn't feel very good this day.
Oh, yes. You got these spicy salsa.
I got spicy salsa with tortilla chips, which was not spicy.
It was almost like tomato paste.
Well, it tasted fine, but it tasted like when I go to the store and get like the generic brand of mild salsa. It was fine. And then also came with guacamole, which as far as I could tell was literally only avocado mashed up. Like, I don't think there were any other things in
there was no salt.
No salt, no lime juice, maybe a little lime juice.
A teaspoon of lime juice for every 500 avocados they mashed up.
Yeah, it was pretty sad, guacamole. But to be fair, that's exactly what I expected I would get in Europe.
Yeah.
Because we've literally never had good barbecue or good Mexican food in Europe.
Just not something that's part of their normal cuisine.
Which is sad because tacos are literally my favorite food. And I made tacos last night. Like within 2 hours of arriving back to our apartment, I had already cooked tacos.
Yes. So after pancakes, which I decided I needed, because I'm an adult, to get the pancake with whipped topping and chocolate and caramel sauce and ice cream for lunch. But only because I'm an adult and I knew that I needed it. And Kayla had her chips. But as the evening approached, it was dinner time, and we just walked across the street where I got one last helping of Bitterballen.
You did.
I was very excited about it. And also a little sad because I knew that I'd be coming back to a place where Bitterballen was no longer on the menu of every restaurant we would go to.
What's on the inside of Bitterballen?
It is a roux, which is
Roux is a thickener for sauces and soups, flour
Yes.
and butter.
So Bitterballen, a Dutch meat-based snack typically containing a mixture of beef or veal, minced or chopped, beef broth, butter, flour for thickening, parsley, salt, and pepper, resulting in a thick roux. Most recipes include nutmeg, and there are also variations utilizing curry powder. So there are lots of different things that you can do with it, but all of them were tasty.
I thought the consistency was like a hummus almost.
Sure,
Yeah,
it was pretty close to that.
to give everyone else. But then it's breaded and deep fat fried, so there's like a crunchy outside.
So there's like a deliciousness to it that just
Can't get without deep fat frying.
you
it.
can't get anywhere but the Netherlands. So
Other than the pancakes and the bitterballen, I mean, Dutch cuisine seemed to primarily be like kind of meat and potato
yeah,
based.
something that we're very familiar with living in the Midwest.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
overall, it was a fantastic trip. We both had a lot of fun.
Can I ask you a question before we're done?
Yes.
What was your favorite thing that we did in Amsterdam?
Favorite thing in Amsterdam would have to be, I would say, the Heineken Museum. Hold on. No. My favorite thing that we did was eat Bitterballen.
Okay.
My second
Fair.
favorite thing was the day trip to Haarlem.
Haarlem.
And my third favorite thing was the Heineken Museum.
Fair enough.
So those are my favorite things. What about you?
Although I'm not really a history buff, I always enjoy the more historical parts of travel. Like
Sure.
like the week before it was Stonehenge and the Roman baths and the St. Fagans Museum in Wales. And this week I think it was like I said, Anne Frank and Van Gogh I think are kind of two, like, if you're in Amsterdam you have to do that.
Yeah.
But I also really, really liked the escape room. That was probably the most fun part, I guess. But that's not Amsterdam specific, so it's kind of an unfair.
That's what I wanted to say that. But as far as Amsterdam specific things.
Right.
But yes, the escape room was a lot of fun, but that's just me being competitive and 3 for 3 on getting out of escape rooms so far. So
But
good record.
But 1 for 3 without having to have help from the.
Oh, the first. Oh yeah,
We had help
the
on
first
our
one.
first one.
The very first time we had a lot of help, and then this one we had just a few clues, and it just depends. I think we need to go to more rooms so we can get better at it.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because you get in there like, wait, what were these people thinking when they put these clues together? But you eventually figure out what the heck is going on.
Next week, we have a fun episode with a couple of our friends that we did as an interview of them about taking road trips. They are avid road trippers and have some funny stories and advice that they're ready to share with you.
They've logged some serious miles.
Absolutely. But that's our show. As always, we ask that you leave any questions you have in the comments section below, or if you have a specific question, feel free to email us directly or connect with us on social media. Our email address is kaylaandsilas@gmail.com, or you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest by searching Kayla and Silas.
Yep.
Once again,
I'm Kayla.
and I'm Silas, wishing you luck on your upcoming adventures.